Life Clean Home. Melissa's story will inspire you and leave you believing in power and the service of others. And please help me in welcoming Melissa Johnson.
Microphone, that's scary. Yeah.
Hello. Y'all hear me okay? Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am Melissa Johnson. I'm the founder of Clean Life Clean Home. And what is Clean Life Clean Home? It is a nonprofit that I started in May of 2016. I pick one person a month, mom or dad, and so far it's been all moms, and that are in recovery. And I sit down with them, I hear their story of addiction to recovery, and then I share their story online, on social media, and on the website to spread hope. I also get a group of people together, a group of volunteers, and we go in and clean their home one time for free. And how I got there is a long and crazy story of addiction. I started doing drugs and drinking really early on as a teenager, and I would say that it started off as fun, although I don't really remember a time where I actually drank like a normal person. I always drank to get drunk, and I always regretted what I did while I was drunk, but I still wanted to feel different from whatever I was feeling. If I was happy, I wanted to be happier. If I was sad, I didn't want to be sad anymore. Basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to numb out. I didn't want to feel at all. And as the years went on, the consequences got worse. When I was 21 years old, in the middle of a blackout, I ran a red light and I hit somebody. And then I went to jail. And I totaled my car, and I don't know who I hit. I don't know if I hurt them. And a few years later, when I was 24, I was at another intersection in another blackout, totaling another car. That time I left the scene of the accident. I was a few minutes away from my apartment and I ran home. And I was eventually picked up at my house and taken to jail for that one, but I didn't want to get arrested for another DUI. And unfortunately though, I got drunk and I would drive. There was never any second thoughts about it. And I ended up getting another DUI whenever I was 24 years old. And you know, the consequences just got worse, but I didn't care what the consequences were. I just wanted to drink normal. And I would continue trying to drink normal until the consequences hurt so bad that I was willing to change. And I could go through the long list of things that I've done that were illegal and landed me in jail, but really what it came down to is when I turned, in 2012, I was 32 years old, and I got arrested for my third DUI. It was a felony, it was in Texas, and that was the beginning of the end, although the end still had a few years to go. It was a felony, and so my lawyer gave me two options. He said you can go to prison or you can have 5 years probation, go to prison for 1.5 years. And I told my sister that I wanted to go to prison, and she was like, how can you want to go to prison? You have 2 kids, how can you do this? And I said, I just can't imagine being free and not drinking. The only way I can not drink and do drugs is if I'm in jail. I just can't. And she said, well, what about your kids? What about my kids? I can barely take care of them now, and I wanted her to take them. And I decided that I would go ahead and do my 5 years probation because, I didn't want to leave my kids, and I thought maybe that I would be able to get sober. And, I would try to get sober. I could go about 13 days, and I felt like I was angry, and it just hurt physically to just be in my own skin. After I went in front of the judge and got my sentencing and 5 years probation, and he asked me if I thought I was alcoholic. I knew deep down that I was alcoholic, and I told him, I don't know, maybe I am. I knew that I was. I knew for a long time that I was. I remember searching up and down the library looking for the book that had the answer to my drinking. And part of my probation was that I had to do 3 weekends in jail. The first weekend that I went to jail, the first night that I was there, I found out that there was a hold on me in Cleveland County, which is where I lived, and I was driving back and forth from Texas to turn myself in. But I had a felony child neglect warrant out for my arrest from 2012, whenever I had the police called on me and I was passed out with my kids playing outside, and I was taken to Red Rock, where I spent 5 days. They thought that I was suicidal, and really honestly, I wasn't trying to kill myself, but I really didn't want to live. And I didn't know that the Cleveland County had issued a warrant out for my arrest. But I found that out when I went down to Texas, and I was down there for the weekend, and they were going to hold me down there in Texas. Luckily, the Cleveland County Sheriff was contacted, and he took the hold off. And so he said, I want you in my office. I had to go to his office that Monday morning, and he said, I thought I knew you. I thought you were a good mom. And I said, I am a good mom. I just have an issue, okay? But I got it under control. I'm good. And he said, well, do you have a driver's license? And I said, well, technically, no. But I'm working on that, okay? And he's like, well, how long has it been since you drank? And I said, it had been like a few days. And I said, 2 weeks. And I don't think he believed me. But anyways, he told me that I was going to be in a program that he had started for women that had been in prison or in jail and had kids. And he introduced me to some women in AA that I am still friends with. Unfortunately, though, I was not able to stay sober, and a few months later, I had my kids taken away for the first time. My son had eaten a marijuana brownie that I had left out, and he went to school and told the teacher that he ate a brownie with medicine in it, and it made him sick. And DHS came and took my kids. I still was not able to get sober. I still drank a few times after that, until I met my soon-to-be sponsor in AA, and I told her that my life was a mess and I needed help. And that was in February of 2014, and I started working the steps. I started working with a sponsor. I stopped driving on a suspended driver's license, and I started to get honest. I got my kids back in May of 2014, and everything was okay for a while. Unfortunately, both my kids have been through a lot because of my addiction, and there were still some abandonment and trust issues with my son, and he was acting out. And I was trying really, really, really hard to keep myself together while he was inpatient. He was inpatient for 8 weeks, and trying to focus. I focused most of my energy on my kids and trying to get my son better without, I didn't put my recovery first. I feel like, and when he got out of inpatient, things were still really hard. and I relapsed in May of 2015. I kind of hit a wall, and I remember telling my coworker, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't balance work, kids, being a single mom, and having to be up at the school every other day to pick up my son. I'm having a really hard time. I can't do this. And that was Sunday, May 17th. That night, I decided that I was going to drink, and I went out that night, and the next morning I woke up still intoxicated, and I decided that I was going to keep going. I was going to keep drinking. My son at that time was not allowed to be at school past 10:30 a.m. because after 10:30 his behavior started to get really bad. The teachers were not able to control him. So I just told him, hey, stay home. We're gonna go over to Main Street. I live in Norman. We walk over to Main Street. I have an interlock in my car. And I got an interlock in my car in 2012 when I got my felony DUI, which prevented me, luckily, from drinking and driving, because I can only imagine what would have happened if I was able to drink and drive. So me and my son went over to Main Street that day, and we spent the day, most of the day together. I let him sit outside on the sidewalk while I walk into the bar and have a few drinks. And his karate studio is across the street, and we went to the karate studio, and at the time, the karate instructor was the only one that could really talk to my son, that could really get him to listen. And we went over there, and I said, I need help. My son won't listen to me. He'll listen to you, like, can you help me? I'm having a breakdown. And he said, yes, my wife is a psychologist. I'm gonna get you in touch with her. Let him stay here. He can run around the karate studio. It'll be fine. Take a break. Well, I did take a break, and I continued on drinking until I blacked out, really. I mean, it was like I was there, but I wasn't there. And a friend of mine who the Cleveland County Sheriff introduced me to, who was in an AA, she found me at the bar, and she said, where's your son? And I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember that he was at the karate studio, and I said, I don't know where he is. She's like, think, where is he at? I don't know. And by that time, I had left my daughter at the YMCA past closing time, and they were able to get a hold of a friend of mine that went and picked her up, and they were both like, we're gonna have to call the police. We don't know where your son is. And like, I was so out of it, I just said, I don't know. And so we called the police to report my son missing. And I had the Norman Police Department and the OU Police Department at my house. And I remember, it's really blurry, but I remember sitting on my couch and the police officer asking me, Miss Johnson, what is your phone number? And I couldn't remember my phone number. And I tried really hard to remember. I don't know what my phone number is. I don't know where my son is. I don't know. And my son called me from the studio, and it all came back to me. I said, I forgot that I left him at the karate studio to play. And so I've already contacted DHS, and they're on their way to get your kids. I can't remember if it was my sponsor at the time or the police or both, but they packed up my kids' stuff. And the police went and picked him up from the karate studio and put them in the back of the police car. And they drove off. And I stood on the sidewalk with my sponsor and a few other women from AA that I had contacted to come over. And one of them said, you have to surrender. And she said, you need to surrender. And I said, I don't know how. I don't know how to do that. And I had to go to court the next morning. I had a few women with me, and a friend of mine, thank you. A friend of mine contacted her sister and her brother-in-law, and they already had their house ready and set up for foster kids or kids to be adopted, and had already agreed to take my kids. So when we went to court, I went to court, and I'm in front of the same judge as I had been a year before. The same judge deciding where my kids were gonna live again, once again, because of my actions. At that moment, I surrendered. I finally understood. I finally understood and accepted that I will never drink like a normal person. Like, I just don't. And sorry. I never have, and I'm really tired of trying. And it's just not worth it. Like, the consequences finally hurt bad enough that I was willing to accept finally that it just doesn't work. And it never will work. And unfortunately, now it's my kids that suffer the consequences. Because I never cared. I never cared about consequences. Throw me in jail. I got jail. I've been in jail so many times, I just didn't care. I'm like, they're gonna put me in jail again. And this time, though, I wasn't sure if I would get my kids back. I was charged with felony child neglect, and I was already on probation for a felony DUI and a felony child neglect charge, and I was going to prison. The district attorney was the same district attorney that had been on my child neglect case a year before, and she was going to put me in prison for 5 years. And I was preparing myself for that. Somehow, I don't know how, the district attorney cases were moved around, and I had another district attorney on my case, and she wanted to give me community sentencing, which is a 2-year program, kind of like drug court. It was like a miracle. I said, how is this happening? How am I not going to prison? And I asked my lawyer, I said, isn't this weird to you? Is it weird that I have this DA that was on the same case before, and she's on this one, and suddenly now she's not? And she was like, oh, no. It's stuff like that happens. I'm like, well, no, not really. But I'll take it. You know, whatever is going to keep me out of prison. But this is the second time that my kids have been in foster care. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen with that. And I wasn't sure if I would be able to get them back. In October, let me go back a little bit. A few months after my relapse, after I got my kids taken away, I will say that I'm going to use the word God, whatever you like to call higher power, spirit, universe, God, whatever. God was telling me that I had to share my story. That relapse, that was the end of that chapter. And that I had to share my story. And I absolutely did not want to do that. I said, no, I'm not going to share my story, this ugly mess of a life that I've lived. I'm not going to share that. But it got to the point where I couldn't sleep at night because all I heard was you have to share your story. So I sat in a restaurant with my mom one day and I said, so I'm being led to share my story. I think I'm gonna start a blog, telling about my addiction and everything that I've gone through, because I don't think that I'm gonna be able to sleep ever again until I start doing it. And I decided to call it My Truth Starts Here, because I decided I was gonna finally get honest, and I was gonna tell my truth. I was gonna share it with the world, and as much as I didn't want to do it, I had to do it, and it's been such a huge part of my recovery. Even after I started the blog, I still wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to get my kids. They were in a family with a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister and a nice house. And I thought, that's what my kids deserve. They don't deserve me. They deserve something so much better that I can't give them. Look where they are because of me. You know, I FaceTime with my kids one day, and it was the last time that I would FaceTime with them because my daughter asked me, she said, "You don't want me anymore?" I couldn't FaceTime with them again after that. It's really weird how when you start living the path that you're meant to live on, how God puts certain people in your life that you're supposed to meet and help you keep moving forward. I'll kind of tell it how it happened, because it really is a miracle. I came into contact with these two ladies that do Reiki treatments in Norman. One of them is named Marilyn. She came into the restaurant that I work at with her friend, and she said, "This is my spiritual friend." I said, "Well, I want a spiritual friend." And a few hours later, a lady that comes into the restaurant that I've been waiting on for a few years comes in, and we start talking about spiritual stuff. And I said, "I think that we should have coffee." And she was like, "I think we should too." So we go to have coffee, and I reveal to her everything. My kids are in foster care. I haven't seen my kids in weeks. Like, I'm going crazy right now. And I'm sober, and I'm starting to share my story. But my son is struggling so much right now that they're not letting me see my kids. She said, "You need to meet Leslie." And so I went to Leslie, and that was in, I think, October of, I didn't see my kids the whole month of October of 2015. And that's when I went to meet Leslie. And Leslie has been my life coach ever since. And she's helped me to, as she says, when I went into her office, she saw this, I was very, like, small, I guess, is the only way, like, I was being, I just didn't know my power. I didn't know, I had no self-esteem. I was very low confidence. I was scared. I was scared because I didn't know if I would get my kids back. And I was going crazy because I hadn't seen my kids. I was literally like going nuts. Since I started working with her, I feel like really blossomed. Not that it's been easy. In 2006, since I didn't have my kids, I was not able to claim them on my tax return, which is a really big deal for a single mom. That I always get a pretty good chunk of money that helps me out throughout the year. So I had to figure out what I was going to do to pay back all of my taxes that I owed. So I decided that I would start cleaning homes. I could clean homes and kind of make my own schedule because this community sentencing program that I'm in, it's a 2-year program and it's 150 hours community service. I do random UAs. I had a curfew at 8 o'clock for 3 months. I have to do a minimum of 8 AA meetings a month. I have court once a month. I don't know if I said that or not. But anyways, it's a lot of stuff. I said I need something that's going to be a pretty, I can work around that schedule. And all I've done is wait tables. Waiting tables has been my comfort zone. So I decided I would start cleaning homes. Well, one day I go to Leslie's office and I'm having a pity party. And I said, I've been a waitress for 19 years and now I'm cleaning homes. I am this big loser at my little pity party that I like to do. Every once in a while, they become less and less. I said, my kids are in foster care, I'm cleaning homes, I'm a waitress, like, what is the point? Where's my life going? And she said, you need to clean for people that are in recovery. And I said, clean life, clean home. And she said, yes. And she said, bring your laptop up here. We're gonna set this Facebook page up. And we're gonna set you up a Google number. And then you're gonna find your first person that you're gonna clean for. And I was like, okay, here we go. Step outside of my comfort zone. So I met Kelly Ross, who is the first person that I cleaned for in May of 2016. And I met her through my kids' foster parents. Because although our relationship started off really, really rough, and it was kind of rough for a while, which understandably, they love my kids. They see a mom that's gotten their kids taken away twice. Obviously they're protective, understandably. But one night, I was at the foster parents' house with my kids and I was having to say goodbye to them. And they were both crying. And the foster dad sat down with me and said, you know, I feel like we have not granted you the grace that you deserve. He said, we haven't always been the nicest to you, but you still keep showing up. You didn't give up, you're still here. And your kids love you, and we feel like we brought your kids as far as we can, and we feel like they need to come back to you. And in May 2016, they came home. May 19th, 2016, I celebrated a year sober. And on that day, I cleaned for the first time for Kelly Ross, the first mom to receive a home cleaning from Clean Life Clean Home. And ever since then, I have been cleaning for 1 or 2 moms a month. I was able to start cleaning for 2 moms a month starting, I think it was October. I have an anonymous sponsor, anonymous donor that has helped out, has blessed a few moms, extra moms that I was not able to clean for originally, but with his help, I've been able to clean for a couple of moms and also provide gift cards to each mom that I clean for. But I've met some really, really amazing women in recovery that I know that I would not have met if I wasn't sharing my story, if I hadn't started this nonprofit. These moms have been through hell with their addiction. I have a special place in my heart for moms that are in recovery or are struggling with addiction. I have a special place in them, obviously. These moms, they've been prostitutes, they've been in prison, they've lived on Skid Row, they've been through hell, and they've come out the other side, and they are amazing women in recovery. And unfortunately, we don't hear many stories about recovery. We hear the ugly side. We hear about overdoses. I hear about an overdose every day. That's normally the only side that we hear. We see the ugly pictures of parents overdosing in the front seat. We don't see the recovery. And that's what Clean Life, Clean Home is about. It's about going to these women, hearing their stories of addiction to recovery, and shining the light on the other side of addiction that we don't get to see, and that's recovery. There are so many amazing people living in recovery today that are afraid to let people know that they're in recovery because of the stigma attached to addiction. And I want to change that. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with addiction that don't get help because they're scared of being judged. They're ashamed, they feel guilty. They don't want people to know that they're struggling. And unfortunately, that causes people to not be able to see that recovery is possible. And that's kind of what Clean Life, Clean Home is to, yes, they did go through hell with their addiction, but look at this. Look where they are now. And they have had their kids taken away, and they've gotten them back. They want to share their story to help others. And then as a way to be of service to these amazing women in recovery, I get a couple of volunteers, and we go in and we clean their home. And because of this nonprofit that I started, my pity parties have become less and less. I feel like I have purpose. I can't explain the feeling that I have after I leave a woman's house in recovery and I've cleaned for her. It is a really, really amazing feeling to be of service to somebody who has been through hell and decided to change their life for themselves and for their kids. And whether you think this addiction is a choice or whether you think it's a disease, it really doesn't matter what you think that it is. People are struggling with it every day, and people are dying every day because of it. And I feel like I feel like it's my purpose to tell my story and to tell other people's stories. It's amazing the response that I've had since sharing my story. I have connected with so many people in recovery. I get messages, multiple messages a week from women who are letting me know. I just got a text message from one a few days ago to let me know that she had 100 days sober. I have another mom that lives in the UK who messages me on Instagram to let me know how well she's doing. She sent me a message on Instagram on her sober St. Patty's Day, her first one. So I get to see things like that, and I get to spread hope to these women that I don't know if I'll ever meet, but we are connected in so many ways. And since my kids have been home, it's been hard. It's been really hard. My son struggles. He has abandonment issues. He has trust issues. But I keep showing up. I keep showing up every single day for him, where I can only show him. I can't tell him anymore because I already apologized the first time when I got him taken away. I already made that apology. I can't apologize anymore. I have to keep showing up. It's a living amends that I have to make every day. And I don't know if he's very proud of the Clean Life, Clean Home. I'm very open with my kids, mainly my son, because he's older and he knows what addiction is. He was there, he saw it, and I just tell him, hey, this is addiction, he's able to separate now the mom from the addiction, and he knows that's not really me. And I just hope that the path that I'm on now helps him to be on a better path. You know, my son has been inpatient 3 times, and you know, I feel like we've done a lot of growing together, and I thank God that chapter of my life is over now. You know, I feel like I'm just being led. I'm being led to do these things. Like, I didn't want to share my story, but I did. I don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing my story, or I don't know how to explain it except for that I'm being led by God. And this isn't necessarily stuff that I would do because it's really hard. But I'm growing every day that I step outside of my comfort zone. And I hope that my son and my daughter can learn. You know, I told my son a couple of days ago that he doesn't have to be ashamed about being inpatient. He doesn't have to be. Because he said, I can't talk to other kids about this stuff. I can only talk to this one friend about it. And I said, are you ashamed? And he said, yeah, it's embarrassing, Mom. I said, well, do you think Mom should be embarrassed about my addiction? He said, no. Well, do you think I should be embarrassed that I've been in jail and that I got you taken away? And he said, no. I said, well, you don't have to be either. I said, because if you see another kid that's struggling, that might be going inpatient, guess what? You can help him. And everything that I've been through, it's so weird that everything that I have gone through, all this hell that I've gone through, like, helps people. It's crazy. So that's kind of how Clean Life has come about. And May will be a year, and I'm excited to see where Clean Life, Clean Home goes from here. So that's all I have. Thank you.